The stars looked different from space. Jack Stone knew this well after 3 years as captain of the research vessel Horizon. Earth had finally reached beyond its own borders, sending ships to the closest stars to learn what was out there. Humanity was taking its first real steps into the galaxy. Jack stood on the bridge of his ship looking at the main screen. His crew of 30 moved around him, checking readings and talking in low voices. The Horizon wasn't big or fancy, but it was a good ship with good people. "Captain," called Mike from his station. "I'm picking up something strange." Jack walked over. Mike was the best sensor operator in the fleet. If he said something was strange, it was worth paying attention to. "What do you have?" Mike pointed to his screen. "This energy reading, I've never seen anything like it. It's massive and it's coming this way. Fast." Before Jack could answer, the lights on the bridge flickered. The main screen went dark for a moment, then came back on, showing something that made Jack's blood run cold. A ship. No, not just a ship. A monster. It was huge, at least 20 times bigger than the Horizon, black as the space around it and shaped like a long, sharp pyramid. It moved without any visible engines, without any light or heat that their sensors could detect. "What is that?" whispered Anna, the ship's doctor. No one had an answer. Humanity had never encountered alien life before, despite years of searching. "Open communications," Jack ordered. "All channels, all languages we have." Tom, the ship's engineer, tried to send their standard greeting message. Nothing happened. "They're not responding, sir." Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years. Real fear. "Get us out of here, maximum speed." The Horizon turned and its engines fired, pushing the ship away from the massive object. For a moment, Jack thought they might escape. Then the ship shuddered. The engines screamed, but the Horizon didn't move forward. Instead, it began to slide backward toward the black ship. "We're caught in some kind of pull," shouted Tom. "The engines can't break free." Jack watched helplessly as his ship was dragged toward the alien vessel. The black ship opened like a giant mouth, revealing a glowing interior. The Horizon was pulled inside, and the mouth closed behind them. The lights went out. Emergency power came on, bathing the bridge in red light. "Everyone, stay calm," Jack said, though his own heart was racing. "We don't know who they are or what they want. They might be peaceful." The ship shuddered again. A loud hissing sound filled the air. Jack smelled something sweet, and then his eyes grew heavy. The last thing he saw before he fell unconscious was a section of the wall melting away, and tall figures moving through the opening. Jack woke up with a pounding headache. He was lying on a cold metal floor in a room with no windows. The walls glowed with a faint blue light that seemed to come from nowhere. His uniform was gone, replaced by a simple gray jumpsuit. Around his neck was a heavy metal collar. He sat up slowly, fighting off waves of dizziness. He wasn't alone. 20 other humans were in the room with him, all wearing the same gray jumpsuits and metal collars. Some he recognized from his crew. Others were strangers. "Captain," a voice said. Jack turned to see Tom sitting against a wall nearby. "You're awake." "What happened?" Jack asked, his voice rough. "Where are we?" "We're on the alien ship," Tom said. "They took the whole crew. I think there are people from other Earth ships, too." Before Jack could ask more questions, one of the walls simply disappeared. Standing there were the aliens. They were tall, at least 7 feet, with 6 limbs, 4 arms and 2 legs. Their bodies were covered in scales that shifted color like oil on water. Their heads reminded Jack of praying mantises with large compound eyes and small moving parts around what might have been mouths. One of the aliens stepped forward. It wore some kind of device on its upper left arm. When it spoke, the device translated its clicks and whistles into flat, emotionless English. "Stand when your masters enter," it said. No one moved. The alien pressed something on a small device it held. Suddenly, the collar around Jack's neck burned with pain. He fell to his knees, gasping. Around him, the other humans were doing the same. "Stand when your masters enter," the alien repeated. Fighting through the pain, Jack forced himself to his feet. The others did the same. As soon as they were all standing, the pain stopped. "Better," the alien said. "You learn quickly for simple animals." "We're not animals," Jack said, his voice stronger now. "We're human beings. We have rights. We—" The pain came again, worse this time. Jack bit his tongue to keep from screaming. The taste of blood filled his mouth. "Tools do not speak unless asked a question," the alien said. "You are property of the Dominion now. You will work, you will obey, or you will die." The pain stopped. Jack remained standing, though his legs shook with the effort. "I am Overseer First Class," the alien said. "You will address me as Master. You will now be evaluated for your usefulness." Over the next few hours, the humans were taken one by one into another room. When they returned, they looked shaken. When Jack's turn came, he was led into a clinical white room where 3 aliens waited. They didn't speak to him. They poked and prodded him with instruments that sometimes hurt. They took samples of his blood, his hair, even scraping cells from the inside of his cheek. They tested his strength by making him lift increasingly heavy objects until he couldn't anymore. They tested his intelligence with puzzles that grew more complex. Through it all, they spoke to each other in their clicking language, not bothering to translate. They treated him like a farmer might examine a horse or cow he was thinking of buying. When they were done, they put a mark on his jumpsuit, a symbol in their language. Then they returned him to the holding room. This continued for days. More humans were brought in, some Jack recognized from news reports as crews from other Earth ships. All wore the same blank expressions, the same gray jumpsuits, the same metal collars. From bits of conversation he managed to overhear, Jack learned that the aliens, the Dominion, had hit Earth hard and fast. Millions of humans had been taken already. The Dominion saw humans as nothing more than clever animals, good for labor in their vast empire. On the 6th day, the humans were split into groups based on the markings on their jumpsuits. Jack watched as his people were taken away one by one. Anna, his doctor, gave him one last desperate look before she was led through a doorway. Mike tried to run back to the group and was dropped by the pain from his collar, then dragged away, unconscious. Finally, only Jack and Tom remained from the original Horizon crew, along with about 30 strangers. "Listen to me," Jack whispered to Tom as they waited their turn. "This isn't the end. Remember who we are, what we've survived as a species. Don't let them break you." Tom's eyes were dull with pain and fear, but he nodded. "What are you thinking, Captain?" Jack looked around to make sure no Dominion were watching. "They think we're animals. That's their mistake. The wall vanished again. A new overseer entered, this one with red markings on its scales. "Mining unit, follow," it ordered. As Jack and Tom were led away with the others, Jack caught Tom's eye. A silent understanding passed between them. The Dominion had made a critical error. They had studied human biology but had completely misunderstood human psychology. They didn't understand human resilience, ingenuity, or our capacity for both cooperation and calculated vengeance when pushed too far. They didn't understand that calling humans slaves was the beginning of their end. As they were loaded onto a transport ship bound for some distant mining world, Jack made a promise to himself. He would survive. He would find a way to fight back, and someday the Dominion would regret the day they ever came to Earth. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. They called us slaves. We burned their armies to ash. Dangerous Ship Part 2. The Awakening. 3 years had passed since Earth fell to the Dominion. 3 years of pain, hard work, and careful watching. Jack had been moved between 5 different mining operations. Each one was worse than the last. Now he worked in the engine rooms of a massive Dominion warship called the Subjugator. The name made Jack smile in a bitter way. The Dominion liked names that showed their power. They didn't realize how much humans hated being subjugated, or how dangerous that hatred could become. Jack's job was simple but hard. He cleaned the massive engines that powered the ship. The work was hot and the air was full of chemicals that burned his lungs. His hands were covered in burns and cuts that never fully healed. The Dominion didn't care if their slaves got hurt, as long as they could still work. "Move faster, Tool," said a Dominion overseer, clicking his pincer-like hands together. All Dominion called humans tools instead of people. It was their way of showing that humans weren't real beings to them, just things to be used. Jack kept his eyes down and moved faster. He had learned when to push back and when to obey. Today was a day for obeying. He had more important things to do than fight with an overseer. The work shift lasted 12 hours. When it was done, Jack and the other engine room workers were marched to the feeding area. The food was a gray paste that tasted like nothing. It had all the things a human body needed to stay alive, but nothing more. Jack ate quickly, not wasting time. As he finished, someone bumped into him. It was Tom. After 3 years, Tom looked different. He was thinner, with gray in his hair even though he was only 35. But his eyes still had the same sharp look they'd had on the horizon. "Waste management needs help," Tom said loudly, for the benefit of any Dominion who might be listening. "You've been reassigned for 2 hours." Jack nodded and followed Tom. This wasn't unusual. Slaves were often moved around to different jobs when needed. The Dominion didn't care which human did what job as long as the work got done. They walked through the huge ship's corridors. The Subjugator was one of the biggest ships in the Dominion fleet. It had 20 levels and could carry thousands of Dominion troops. It also had about 500 human slaves who did all the dirty, dangerous work the Dominion didn't want to do. When they were in a service tunnel where no Dominion ever went, Tom stopped. "Did you get it?" he asked, his voice low. Jack looked around to make sure they were alone, then reached into a hidden pocket he had made in his jumpsuit. He pulled out a small metal object that looked like a broken piece of engine, but it wasn't broken. Jack had made it, piece by piece, over many weeks. "It works?" Tom asked. Jack nodded. "I tested it on myself yesterday. It blocks the collar's signal for about 30 seconds. Tom smiled. It was a hard smile, not happy, but determined. "That's enough time. Kate says she's ready too." Kate Wilson had been a nurse before the Dominion came. Now she worked in medical disposal, getting rid of waste from the Dominion medical bay. She had been slowly collecting medicines that could be used as sedatives or poisons. "How many people do we have now?" Jack asked. 32, Tom said. "All have been practicing the pain control techniques. All are ready to move when we give the signal." The pain control techniques had been Tom's discovery. The collars worked by causing pain when a human disobeyed. But Tom had found that with practice, a human mind could separate itself from the pain. It didn't stop the pain, but it let a person think and act even while hurting. It wasn't easy, and not everyone could do it. But those who could had a weapon the Dominion didn't know about. "And the ship systems?" Jack asked. Tom's smile grew wider. "Robert says he can do it. He needs 10 minutes at a control panel, but once he's in, he can lock down sections of the ship and control the air." Robert Davis had been a scientist before the Dominion came. He'd spent 3 years studying the ship while working as a hull cleaner. The Dominion never worried about slaves learning their technology. Why would they? In their minds, humans were just smart animals. They didn't expect animals to understand complex systems. That was their biggest mistake. "We move in 3 days," Jack said. "When we dock at Station 4, security will be focused on the station, not on us." Tom nodded. "I'll tell the others." 1 tap for yes, 2 for no. They had developed a simple tap code to communicate. 1 tap on a wall or floor meant yes, 2 meant no. 3 rapid taps meant danger. It was simple but effective. The Dominion never noticed or cared when slaves tapped on things. As they talked, they heard footsteps. Quickly, Tom pretended to be showing Jack how to fix a waste pipe. A moment later, a Dominion technician walked by. It barely looked at them. Slaves fixing things was normal. Nothing to worry about. When the technician was gone, Jack put the signal blocker back in his hidden pocket. "We only get 1 chance at this," he said. "If we fail, we won't." Tom cut him off. "Everyone knows what's at stake." What was at stake was more than just their lives. It was the future of humanity. In 3 years, the Dominion had taken millions of humans from Earth. They were spread across dozens of worlds and ships working as slaves. If Jack and the others could take this ship, they could start fighting back. They could begin freeing other humans. They could show the Dominion that taking humans as slaves had been the worst mistake in their long history. Later that night, Jack lay on his thin sleeping mat in the slave quarters. Around him, 20 other men slept or pretended to sleep. The lights were never fully off in slave areas. The Dominion wanted to be able to see what their tools were doing at all times. Jack thought about Earth, about the blue sky and green trees, about the taste of real food and the feeling of rain on his face. He wondered if he would ever see his homeworld again. Then he thought about the plan. It was dangerous. Many of them would probably die. But they had no choice. Living as slaves wasn't really living at all. The next day passed slowly. Jack did his work and kept his head down. He managed to speak briefly with Kate when they crossed paths in a corridor. "Medical bay is ready," she whispered as she passed. "The ventilation system will carry the sedative to the Dominion quarters." Jack gave a small nod. Kate was brave. She had lost her husband when the Dominion first attacked Earth. She had nothing left to lose, which made her both dangerous and valuable. That night, a young human named Dan died in the engine room. He had been worked too hard for too long, and his heart simply stopped. The Dominion overseer had the body taken to waste disposal. To the Dominion, a dead slave was just broken equipment. As Jack watched Dan's body being dragged away, something hardened inside him. Dan had been just 20 years old. He should have had his whole life ahead of him. Instead, he died cleaning alien engines, treated as less than nothing. That night, Jack called together his core group: Tom, Kate, Robert, and Ben. Ben Wright had been a chef before the Dominion came. Now he worked in food preparation and had been collecting sharp implements that could be used as weapons. They met in a small maintenance space between walls, where the Dominion never went. "Dan's death changes things," Jack said. "We move tomorrow, not in 3 days." "But the ship won't be docked," Robert said. "Security will be higher." "Security is always watching the outside," Jack replied. "They never think the danger will come from inside, from slaves." He looked at each of them in turn. These people had been through hell. They were thin, scarred, and tired. But in their eyes, Jack saw something the Dominion had never understood about humans: unbreakable determination. "They think we're animals," Jack said, his voice barely above a whisper. "But they've never seen what happens when humans decide that just surviving isn't enough. When we decide that freedom is worth dying for." Tom nodded. "I can get the signal blockers to 30 people by morning." "That's all we need to start." Kate held up a small vial of clear liquid. "This goes into the ventilation system. It will make them slow, confused. Not all will sleep, but it will help." Ben showed a piece of metal he had sharpened to a deadly point. "We're ready." Jack looked at them all and felt for the first time in 3 years a spark of hope. "Tomorrow," he said, "we take back our future." Morning came too quickly. Jack hadn't slept much. His mind kept going over the plan, looking for problems, thinking of solutions. By the time the lights brightened in the slave quarters, he was already awake and ready. The Dominion guards came, as they always did, clicking and whistling at the humans to get up. Jack stood with his head down, playing the part of the broken slave. Inside, his heart beat fast with fear and excitement. Today everything would change, one way or another. At the morning meal, Tom walked past Jack's table and dropped something small into his hand. The signal blocker. Jack slipped it into his hidden pocket without looking at it. Around the room, he saw other small exchanges happening. Their core team was passing out the devices to the 30 people they had chosen for the first wave. Each person had been picked carefully. They were the strongest, the smartest, or the most determined. They were people who could keep fighting even when things got bad. And things would get bad. Jack had no illusions about that. After the meal, the slaves went to their workstations. Jack and 5 others went to the engine room. The big Dominion overseer was already there, moving around on his 6 legs, checking that everything was running correctly. "You, Tool," the overseer said to Jack. "Clean the coolant pipes, they're running hot." Jack nodded and went to the tool locker. As he selected a cleaning tool, he looked at the other humans in the room. 3 of them had signal blockers. They were part of the plan. The other 2 didn't know anything about it. It was safer that way. If someone was caught and questioned, they couldn't tell what they didn't know. Jack began cleaning the coolant pipes. The work was hot and dangerous. If a pipe burst, the coolant would burn through human skin in seconds. The Dominion didn't care. If a slave died, they just got another one. As he worked, Jack waited for the right moment. The plan would start at exactly 1200 ship time. That was when the watch changed for the Dominion guards, and when Kate would put the sedative into the ventilation system. The minutes ticked by slowly. Jack's hands moved automatically, cleaning the pipes while his mind focused on the time. 11 Trambody. 11:55, 11:59. At exactly 1200, Jack pressed the small button on his signal blocker. The device made a soft humming sound. The collar around his neck grew warm, then cool. For 30 seconds it wouldn't work. For 30 seconds, he was free. Across the engine room, 3 other humans pressed their blockers at the same time. In that moment, the overseer turned, sensing something was wrong. He reached for the control that would activate all the collars in the room. He was too late. Jack was already moving, the heavy wrench in his hand swinging hard. It connected with the overseer's head with a sickening crunch. The alien made a high-pitched sound of pain and surprise, then fell to the floor. The 2 humans who weren't part of the plan stared in shock. One started to back away. "Listen to me," Jack said quickly. "We're taking the ship. You can help us or you can stay here, but we're not slaves anymore." One of the men nodded immediately. The other hesitated, then said, "The collars." "We have a way to block them," Jack said. "But we need to move fast." He went to the overseer's body and took the collar control device. With it, he could turn off the collars of anyone nearby. It wouldn't work for the whole ship, but it was better than nothing. "Mark, guard the door," Jack said to one of the men with a blocker. "The rest of you, with me." They left the engine room and moved quickly through the service tunnels. These narrow passages were used for maintenance and weren't monitored as closely as the main corridors. The humans who kept the ship running knew them well. At a junction, they met another group led by Tom. There were 7 of them, all looking nervous but determined. "Medical team is in position," Tom reported. "Kate got the sedative into the system 10 minutes ago. Most of the Dominion in their quarters should be affected by now." "Robert?" Jack asked. "Already at the auxiliary control room with his team," Tom said. "Ben is leading a group to secure weapons." They moved on, staying in the service tunnels as much as possible. Twice they had to cross main corridors. Both times they saw Dominion walking around, but the aliens seemed slower than usual, their movements not as precise. The sedative was working. When they reached the auxiliary control room, they found it already secured. Robert and his team of 4 had taken out the 2 Dominion technicians who normally worked there. Robert himself was at the main console, his fingers moving quickly over the alien controls. "How's it going?" Jack asked. Robert didn't look up. "I'm in the system, but there are security locks I didn't expect. I need more time." "How much time?" 10 minutes. Maybe less." Jack nodded. "You've got 5. Tom, stay here and help him. The rest of you with me." Jack led his growing team toward the armory. Along the way, they met Ben's group, who had secured several Dominion weapons. The weapons were designed for beings with 6 limbs, but the humans had figured out how to use them, with just 2 arms. "Bridge is locked down," Ben reported. "The Dominion captain has called for security teams, but there's confusion. They don't understand what's happening." Jack smiled grimly. They're about to figure it out. They reached the armory and found 2 Dominion guards outside. The guards saw the armed humans and raised their weapons, but they were slow from the sedative. The humans fired first. The Dominion weapons made a high-pitched whine, and beams of intense heat shot out. The guards fell, their scaled bodies smoking. With the armory secured, Jack distributed weapons to everyone who knew how to use them. Then he contacted Robert through a communication device taken from a fallen guard. How much longer? Done. Robert's voice came back. I have control of internal systems. I've sealed off sections of the ship with high Dominion presence and vented atmosphere in some critical areas. Casualties? Jack asked. Unknown but high, Robert replied. Most of the crew was caught by surprise. Between the sedative and the atmosphere venting, I estimate we've neutralized 60% of the Dominion on board. That still left hundreds of Dominion to deal with. But now the humans had weapons, control of critical systems, and the element of surprise. Most importantly, they had something the Dominion couldn't understand. A burning desire for freedom that made them willing to risk everything. Jack's team moved toward the bridge. Along the way, they freed more human slaves, quickly explaining the situation. Some joined them immediately. Others, too afraid or too broken by years of slavery, hid or ran. Jack didn't blame them. Freedom was a scary thing when you'd gotten used to having no choices. As they approached the bridge, alarms began to sound throughout the ship. The Dominion were organizing a response. Jack's team took positions in the corridor leading to the bridge. They had the advantage of position, but the Dominion would have numbers. Whatever happens next, Jack told his people, remember that we've already won. We're not slaves anymore. We've proven that humans can't be broken. Then the first wave of Dominion security forces came around the corner, their weapons ready. The battle for the subjugator had begun. The fighting was fierce. The Dominion were trained soldiers, but they were confused and slowed by the sedative. The humans fought with the desperate energy of people who had nothing to lose. Slowly, the humans pushed forward toward the bridge. They lost people along the way. Good people who had survived years of slavery, only to die fighting for freedom. Jack mourned each one but kept moving. Their sacrifice couldn't be wasted. Finally, they reached the bridge. The doors were sealed, but Robert, working from the auxiliary control room, overrode the locks. The doors slid open, and Jack led the charge inside. The bridge was large, with stations for 20 Dominion operators. Only 5 were present, along with the ship's captain, a large Dominion with gold markings on his scales. The captain stood as the humans burst in, his posture showing shock rather than fear. You're making a mistake, the Dominion captain said, his translator making his clicks and whistles into flat English. You're nothing but primitive bipeds. You can't possibly operate a vessel of this complexity. Jack smiled as he pointed his weapon at the captain. Behind him, his people secured the rest of the bridge crew. That's the thing about humans, Jack said. We learn, we adapt, and we never ever forget who hurt us. The captain made a gesture, trying to activate something on his control panel. Jack fired his weapon. The beam hit the captain in the chest, burning a hole through his scaled body. The alien fell, dead before he hit the floor. Secure the rest of them, Jack ordered. Robert, what's our status? We control all critical systems, Robert's voice came through the communication device. Engineering, life support, weapons, engines, all ours. And the Dominion? Those who survived are trapped in sealed sections of the ship. They can't get out without our help, and they're running out of air. Jack nodded. It wasn't a clean victory. Many humans had died, and many Dominion as well. But the ship was theirs. For the first time in 3 years, humans controlled their own fate again. Set course away from Dominion space, Jack ordered. And send a message on all frequencies in every language we know. What message? Asked Anna, who had survived and now sat at the communication station. Jack looked around at the bridge at the faces of his people, former slaves who had taken their freedom back through courage and sacrifice. Tell them, he said, that the subjugator has a new name now. From this day forward, it's called Humanity's Vengeance, and we're just getting started. News of the Humanity's Vengeance spread through the Dominion Empire like wildfire, a warship taken by slaves. It was impossible, the Dominion leaders said. No species they had ever conquered had managed to overcome the neural collars, let alone mastered Dominion technology quickly enough to operate a warship, yet the impossible had happened, and it was only the beginning. On the bridge of the renamed warship, Jack stood looking at a star map. The ship had been traveling at top speed for 2 weeks, staying away from known Dominion patrol routes. In that time, they had learned more about the ship's systems, with Robert leading teams of humans who studied the Dominion technology day and night. "Captain," Anna called from her station, "we're picking up a signal. It's a Dominion transport ship." Jack walked over to her station. The screen showed a large vessel moving slowly through space. It wasn't a warship, but a transport, the kind used to move slaves between worlds. "How many life forms aboard?" Jack asked. Anna checked the sensors. "About 2,000 Dominion crew and nearly 5,000 human life signs." Jack felt his heart beat faster. 5,000 humans, slaves being transported to some Dominion world to work and die for alien masters. "Battle stations," he ordered. "Tom, how are our weapons?" Tom, now the ship's weapons officer, checked his screen. "All systems ready. We can disable their engines with targeted shots." "Do it," Jack said. "But be careful. We don't want to hurt the humans on board." The Humanity's Vengeance moved into position behind the transport ship. The transport had sensors, but not very good ones. By the time they detected the warship approaching, it was too late. Tom fired the weapons. Beams of energy shot out, hitting the transport's engines with perfect accuracy. The transport slowed, then stopped, dead in space. "They're sending a distress signal," Anna reported. "Jam it," Jack ordered. "Robert, can you access their systems from here?" Robert, who had become the ship's systems expert, worked quickly at his station. "Yes, I think so. Their security isn't as good as a warship's. Give me 5 minutes." While Robert worked, the transport tried to restart its engines. It failed. "The Dominion crew was trapped. I'm in," Robert finally said. "I have control of their doors and life support." "Good," Jack said. "Open all the holding pens where they keep the humans, and send this message to the human sections only. This is Captain Jack Stone of the human vessel Humanity's Vengeance. We are here to free you. The Dominion crew is contained. Make your way to the docking bays. Freedom awaits." Robert sent the message. On the screen, they could see activity inside the transport. The human slaves were moving, flooding the corridors, heading toward the docking bays as instructed. The Dominion crew tried to stop them, but they were outnumbered. Many of the humans had been miners strong despite years of poor treatment. They fought with tools, with bare hands, with anything they could find. "Prepare boarding parties," Jack told Ben, who had become his security chief. "We need to help them." Ben nodded and led teams of armed humans to the docking bays. They boarded the transport and helped guide the freed slaves back to the Humanity's Vengeance. It took hours to get all the humans aboard. The ship was crowded now, with barely enough room for everyone. But no one complained. They were free, and that was all that mattered. As for the Dominion crew of the transport, Jack gave them a choice: surrender or die. Most surrendered. They were put into the same holding pens they had used for human slaves. It seemed like justice. The next day, Jack called a meeting of his officers. The group had grown. Besides Tom, Robert, Kate, and Ben, there were now others. Anna had become communications officer. Mike, who had been found among the freed slaves, was now sensor operator again, just like on the horizon years ago. And there were new faces. Strong, smart people who had been freed from the transport and wanted to fight back. "We've struck our first blow," Jack told them. "But it's just the start. There are millions of humans enslaved across the Dominion Empire. We need to free them all." "We need more ships," Tom said. "One warship isn't enough." "The transport can be converted," Robert suggested. "It's not as powerful as a warship, but it can fight." "We also need information," Anna added. "Where are the largest groups of human slaves kept? Which facilities are the least defended?" They talked for hours, making plans. The freed humans from the transport had brought valuable information. They knew about other slave transports, about mining worlds where thousands of humans worked, about Dominion bases that weren't heavily guarded. Over the next few months, The human fleet grew. They captured 2 more transports and converted them into fighting ships. They raided a small Dominion outpost and took weapons and supplies. Each victory brought more freed humans to their cause. Each freed group brought new skills, new knowledge, and a burning desire for revenge against the species that had enslaved them. Word of the human rebellion reached the highest levels of the Dominion government. The Dominion Council, made up of the oldest and most powerful members of the species, met in their grand hall on Dominax Prime, their homeworld. "How is this possible?" demanded High Elder Vex, his scales turning red with anger. "These creatures were nothing when we found them. Primitive beings barely able to leave their own planet." "They are adaptable," said Commander Krell, the Dominion's most decorated military leader. "More so than any species we have encountered before. They learn quickly, and they work together in ways we did not expect." "Can you stop them?" asked another elder. Krell stood tall on his 6 limbs. "I will take a fleet of our best warships. I will find these rebel humans and crush them. This embarrassment will be ended." The elders approved the plan. Krell was given command of 15 warships, the largest fleet assembled in many years. They would hunt down the human ships and destroy them, but finding the humans proved harder than I expected. The human fleet never stayed in one place for long. They would appear, attack a Dominion facility, free any human slaves, and disappear before Dominion forces could respond. And the human fleet kept growing. 6 months after the capture of the subjugator, the humans had 7 ships. Not all were warships, but Robert and the other engineers had modified them, adding weapons and improving their speed. Finally, Krell got the break he was looking for. A damaged human ship left a trail that his scouts followed. The trail led to a star system with a small rocky planet. The human fleet was there, hiding in the shadow of the planet. "Prepare for battle," Krell ordered his fleet. "Today we end this human rebellion." The 15 Dominion warships moved into the system, their weapons ready. Krell was confident. He had superior numbers, superior firepower, and years of combat experience. The humans had a few stolen ships and no formal training. It would be an easy victory. He was wrong. The human fleet detected the Dominion ships coming. Instead of running or hiding, they formed a battle line. 7 ships against 15. The odds were bad, but the humans had something Krell didn't understand. A sense that they were fighting for their very existence as a species. "All ships battle formation," Jack ordered from the bridge of the Humanity's Vengeance. "Remember our plan. Hit and move. Don't stay in their firing solutions." The human fleet moved with surprising coordination. They had developed new tactics, taking advantage of their smaller size and greater maneuverability. The Dominion warships were powerful but slow to turn. The human ships darted in, fired their weapons at specific weak points, then moved away before the Dominion ships could respond effectively. It was chaos, but a controlled chaos that favored the humans. 3 Dominion warships were disabled in the first wave of attacks. 2 more were badly damaged when the humans targeted their engine cooling systems, causing them to overheat and shut down. Krell was shocked. His carefully planned attack was falling apart. The humans weren't fighting like any enemy he had faced before. They used strange tactics, took risks no Dominion commander would consider, and seemed to anticipate his orders before he gave them. "All ships regroup," he ordered. "Concentrate fire on their flagship." The remaining Dominion ships turned their weapons on the Humanity's Vengeance. The human flagship took heavy damage but didn't retreat. Instead, it charged directly at Krell's command ship, firing all weapons. Direct hits damaged Krell's ship. Alarm sounded on his bridge. His weapons officer reported that main weapons were offline. His engine room reported damage to the propulsion systems. Then Krell saw something that made his scales turn pale with fear. The human ships were surrounding his command vessel. The other Dominion ships were too damaged or too far away to help. "This is Captain Jack Stone of the Humanity's Vengeance," came a message on all frequencies. "Surrender your vessel or be destroyed." Krell had never surrendered in his long career, but he was a practical commander. He knew when a battle was lost. "This isn't over, human," he said, as he gave the order to stand down. The Dominion has ruled this sector of space for 12,000 years. We will not be defeated by former slaves. You already have been, came the reply. The Battle of Proxima Centauri will be remembered as the day humanity showed the galaxy that the Dominion can be beaten. As Krell's ship was boarded by armed humans, he realized with growing dread that this human rebellion was no longer just an embarrassment to the Dominion. It was an existential threat. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Dominion had suffered a significant military defeat, and it had come at the hands of a species they had dismissed as barely sentient. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Proxima Centauri. 1 year of constant fighting, freeing slaves, and building a force strong enough to challenge the mighty Dominion. The human fleet now numbered over 100 ships. Some were former Dominion vessels. Others were ships built by freed humans using Dominion technology and human creativity. On the bridge of the Humanity's Vengeance, Jack stood looking at a holographic map of Dominion space. The map had many red marks showing Dominion worlds and bases, but there were also blue marks showing places the humans had freed. The blue area was growing. "Report," Jack said to his officers. Anna spoke first. "The viral code is ready. Robert and his team have tested it on the systems we captured from Krell's ship. It works perfectly." The viral code had been Robert's idea. It was a piece of computer programming that could spread from one Dominion ship to another through their communication networks. Once inside a ship's systems, it would shut down weapons, engines, and life support. It wouldn't kill the Dominion crews, but it would leave their ships helpless. "Ben?" Jack turned to his security. "Chief, the assault teams are ready," Ben reported. "Every ship has trained fighters ready to board Dominion vessels once the virus disables them." Jack nodded. Tom, now fleet commander, checked his tablet. "All ships report ready for jump. We can be at Dominax Prime in 6 hours. Dominax Prime, the Dominion homeworld. The center of the empire that had enslaved humanity and dozens of other species. It was protected by the largest fleet in Dominion space. Attacking it was either very brave or very foolish. Maybe both. "Kate?" Jack asked. Kate had become the fleet's chief medical officer, but she was also in charge of communicating with other enslaved species the humans had found and freed during their campaign. "The Rilari and Ventari ships are in position," she said. "They will join us for the final attack." The Rilari were a bird-like species with advanced technology. The Ventari were massive beings who lived in high-gravity worlds. Both had been enslaved by the Dominion for centuries. When humans freed them, they joined the fight eagerly. "Then we're ready," Jack said. "Send the order to all ships. We jump to Dominax Prime in 1 hour." As his officers went to prepare, Jack stayed looking at the map. He thought about the 3 years he had spent as a slave, and the year of fighting to free his people. So many had died, but so many had been freed. The Dominion had taken millions of humans from Earth. They had thought humans would be perfect, slaves, smart enough to work complex machines but not smart enough to fight back effectively. They had been wrong. Humans were not just smart. They were creative, adaptable, and they understood something the Dominion never did. Real strength comes from working together, not from forcing others to serve you. Jack had learned that the Dominion had been ruling their part of the galaxy for 12,000 years. In all that time, no species had successfully rebelled against them, until humans came along. The Dominion Council was meeting in their Grand Assembly on Dominax Prime. Reports from across their empire all told the same story. Ships being disabled by an unknown virus then boarded by human forces. Slave worlds being liberated. Dominion forces retreating or surrendering. "How is this possible?" demanded High Elder Vex. They were nothing. Animals with primitive technology. The other elders had no answer. Their civilization, built on the exploitation of lesser species, was facing its first real threat in thousands of years. Then something happened that shocked the council even more. Their secure meeting was interrupted by a communication signal that bypassed all their security protocols. The face of a human appeared on the large screen at the front of the chamber. It was Jack Stone. Older now, with scars and gray hair, but with eyes that burned with determination. "You called us slaves," he said simply. "That was your first mistake." The elders were too shocked to respond. How had this human hacked into their most secure communication system? "Your empire has stood for thousands of years because you've only encountered species who surrendered or fought alone," Jack continued. "Humanity does neither." At that moment, alarms began to sound throughout the Dominion capital city. The human fleet had arrived. Over 100 ships appeared in orbit around Dominax Prime. The Dominion home fleet moved to intercept them, but something strange happened. One by one, the Dominion ships went dark, their systems shutting down. "Your second mistake," Jack said, "was teaching us your technology while believing we couldn't understand it. We didn't just understand it, we improved it." The Dominion watched in horror as their home fleet powered down, leaving their world defenseless. The virus had spread through their entire network in minutes, disabling every ship, and your final mistake was believing that once broken we would never rise again. Humanity has faced extinction dozens of times in our history. Each time, we came back stronger. Jack's face was replaced by images from around the Dominion Empire. Human ships, freeing slaves on dozens of worlds. Former slave species joining the fight. Dominion bases surrendering to combined forces of humans, Rilari, Ventari, and other liberated peoples. "We're not here for revenge," Jack's voice continued over the images. "We're here to end your empire of slavery forever." The human fleet did not destroy Dominax Prime. They didn't have to. Instead, they landed troops who quickly took control of the main cities. The Dominion military, without their fleet and with their systems compromised by the virus, could not mount an effective defense. The Dominion Council was arrested by Ben and a team of human soldiers. They would stand trial for crimes against countless species. The Council Chamber, once the center of Dominion power, now became the meeting place for representatives of all the species they had enslaved. Over the next few months, the human-led alliance dismantled the Dominion Empire piece by piece. Every slave world was liberated. The neural inhibitor production facilities were destroyed. The Dominion military was disarmed and confined to their home system. 5 years after the first human was captured, the last Dominion slave world was freed. The species that had ruled a third of the galaxy found themselves restricted to their home system, their empire gone, their military broken. On the observation deck of the Humanity's Vengeance, Jack stood with Tom, Kate, Ben, and Robert, watching as representatives from 27 formerly enslaved species signed the Charter of Sentient Rights. It was a new beginning for this part of the galaxy, a promise that no species would ever enslave another again. "They never understood what they were dealing with," Tom said quietly. Jack nodded. "They saw our technology and thought it measured our worth. They should have looked at our history." He gazed at the stars, thinking of Earth. The planet was free again. The Dominion forces there had surrendered quickly when the human fleet arrived. Now humans were returning home, helping to rebuild what had been damaged during the occupation. But not all humans wanted to go back to Earth. Many, like Jack and his officers, had found a new purpose. There were other parts of the galaxy to explore, other species to meet. And there were still pirates and slavers out there who needed to be stopped. "What now, Captain?" Kate asked. Jack smiled. It was a real smile, something that had been rare during the years of slavery and war. "The Humanity's Vengeance was a good name for a warship," he said, "but I think it's time for a new name to match our new purpose." "What did you have in mind?" Robert asked. "Humanity's Promise," Jack said, "because that's what we are now. A promise that freedom is worth fighting for, and that no one should ever have to live as a slave." The others nodded their agreement. The war was over, the enslaved were free, and humanity had proven something important to the galaxy and to themselves. "They called us slaves," Jack said, looking out at the stars. "And we burned their armies to ash. But that was just the beginning of our story, not the end." As the Humanity's Promise prepared to leave orbit, Jack gave the order to set course for the unexplored regions beyond the former Dominion space. There were new worlds to discover, new civilizations to meet, and this time, Humans were going into the galaxy not as slaves or conquerors, but as explorers and protectors. Humanity had been forged in the fire of slavery and war. They had emerged stronger, wiser, and more united than ever before. The galaxy would never be the same again. And that was a good thing.